Hi everyone and welcome back. I traveled a little, I had my birthday, and just like that 2 weeks passed by like it was nothing, but I'm back on track and I'm ready to hit some eardrums. As promised, today I'll have a look at the newest member of the Shanling family, the M3 Ultra digital audio player that goes for $479 US. Later on I'll compare it with the FiiO M21, which is very similar yet quite different. So let's check it out in the usual fashion. Although M21 and M3 Plus have similar display sizes of 4.7 inch, this one has a smaller chin and a smaller body as well, so it's more pocket friendly versus the M21, which is slightly wider and taller as well. Obviously, we're dealing with a fully CNC machined aluminum unit. Yes, even the volume wheel is made out of aluminum, which I believe is really nice. We have just tempered glass on its back and also on top and below the unit, but all of that was put in there for a better Wi-Fi signal strength and also for Bluetooth. This was mandatory. So everything is made just from glass and aluminum. There are no plastic pieces whatsoever on this unit. We have 3 colors available for the M3 Plus: silver, black, or this champagne gold, but it looks more like raw copper to me. We have a new design language for Shanling, which I must say looks quite good on the M3 Plus, and the only things I dislike about it are these sharp edges that are prone to scratches and dents. For the ultimate protection, I recommend getting this official M3 Plus leather case that sells for $33 on Amazon. Unfortunately, they have it just in silver or purple. There are no brown or black cases available for the M3 Plus. There is one thing which I cherish on Shanling devices: the godly layout of all of them. We have just 3 buttons on M3 Plus, a volume wheel, 2 headphone jacks, a micro SD card slot, and a USB Type-C connector. By comparison, FiiO M21 has 9 buttons and switches. I'm not kidding, so I need probably 5 minutes or so to learn these 3 buttons on M3 Plus and about a day or two to learn every switch and button on the M21 by FiiO. And you can already guess which one is much easier to use without taking it out of my pocket. I don't think it can get any simpler than this. The 4.7-inch LCD screen looks considerably brighter compared to that of the FiiO M21, and the contrast levels are also boosted, which I personally enjoy. The screen is quite small, especially when compared to a flagship smartphone, but at the end of the day, browsing through music seems easy and intuitive, and the same can be said about the Google Play Store and its Android 13 based UI. Speaking of which, yes, it's running an unlocked version of Android 13, so yes, you can install any third-party app you might desire, streaming apps, YouTube, games, anything really. The other thing that slightly bothers me on the M3 Plus is that we have an already aging Snapdragon 665 system on chip that basically powers all modern digital audio players of today. However, it's not that fast or snappy like the Snapdragon 680 found on the FiiO M21. And when doing some comparison, it's clearly that the M21 just moves a little bit faster. This is a small gimmick on my part, as most of you are probably interested in its sound performance rather than in its raw performance metrics as an Android device. We have 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of ROM memory, out of which around 50 are available for the end user. That's not a lot for lossless music storing, but luckily those micro SD cards are quite cheap nowadays and you can have multiple cards if you wish. It supports cards up to 2 terabytes in size. Moving on to all things audio, this incredibly small and pocket-friendly unit uses 4 actual DAC chips, and those are Cirrus Logic 43198. The voltage amplification is done by 2 OPA 6 and 12 op amps, And for current buffer duties, we have another two SGM op-amps for a fully balanced operation. Perhaps what makes it quite interesting and standing out from the crowd, even versus its predecessors, is the hefty power output of 800 milliwatts per channel in 30 ohms via its 4.4mm balanced output, compared to the M3 Ultra that outputted 260 milliwatts. It's quite a big difference. We have considerably more power, and yes, finally you can drive some heavy-duty planars and high-impedance dynamic headphones, but more about that in a minute. The M3 Plus is the most powerful digital audio player that I have tried in this size and in this weight. It's slightly more powerful versus the M21, but this one can be a little bit more powerful than M3 Plus. If you add an external power brick, it can provide, I believe, 950 milliwatts of power, but you need to stay around your wall, and that already defeats the purpose of being a portable unit. In the usual fashion, we have several working modes. Android mode lets you install and use any Android app. Prime mode disables the Android interface and lets you use the unit as an offline-only music player. USB DAC mode and Bluetooth amp mode are self-explanatory, and there's also an AirPlay 2 mode for you Apple users out there. When using the standard 3.5 headphone jack, there is one interesting feature that I didn't see on M21 or on any other digital audio player. You can use only 2 out of 4 internal DACs and get up to 2 extra hours of music playback, or you can engage all 4 DACs for a slightly wider soundscape and for a more effortless presentation at the cost of a lower battery life. However, when using the 4.4mm balanced output, all 4 DACs are working no matter what, because all of those are working in mono mode, and for a fully balanced operation you need 4 DAC chips working in mono mode. Besides this, you have 5 digital filters to choose from and also 3 gain levels. Unfortunately, we do not have a global equalizer function like we do on FiiO devices and also hybrid devices. However, there is an EQ option available on Shanling's own offline music playback software pre-installed on the unit. I returned from Greece just a couple of days ago. I needed some time to recharge my internal batteries, and these two are the only devices that I took with me in this trip. And it felt like going back in time when I was still rocking Walkmans and Discmans. FiiO M21 sounded more like my 30-year-old Sony D25 Discman that I still have around the house and it's still working as new. And M3 Plus sounded like the very first generation Walkman. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. If you watched my FiiO M21 video, then you already know that FiiO is no longer chasing those perfect measurements, that flat, ultra-linear frequency response. They chose to go with a more fun sound signature this time around. So this is a very different sounding FiiO compared to what they did in the past, like M17 for example. Shanling, however, they are walking this path for a very, very long time. They never changed their sound signature, and actually appreciate them for that. So they always chose to go with a fun sound signature, discarding those perfect technicalities like ultimate resolution, ultimate detail retrieval, or super fast transit response. Shanling didn't care that much about those things. They cared only for the act of music listening, and this is what we get again with the M3 Plus. If you have ever tried a Shanling digital audio player before, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, with one small difference is that this one is even thicker, denser and bolder sounding in the mid-range compared to what they did before. From the entire lineup, the current lineup, this one actually sounds very similar with their M5 Ultra and also with their flagship M8T, which is using those 2 vacuum tubes on top. So it's like eating pancakes with maple syrup and sipping from milk and honey. It's very sweet sounding in the mid-range, more so compared to what I tried from the entire Shanling lineup, from the entire FiiO lineup and also Hebe lineup. So if you want that super juicy and bold mid-range, this is what I would choose. It's really special sounding in this regard. The one and only region that stands out head and shoulders above the rest, it's obviously the mid-range region on M3 Plus. It's forward, it's it's dense, it takes all of your attention, all of the spotlights are going to the mid-range region. It's denser than usual, and it's a bit more to what I would describe as a natural sounding digital audio player. Maybe it's not the cleanest, the most resolving, the fastest or the punchiest sounding digital audio player out there, but it slowly relaxes your senses and lets you enjoy a slower pace, rhythm and timing, and that somehow, works as magic, especially if you are in a vacation and you want to relax yourself and just feel great. This is exactly what I'm getting from the M3 Plus. While I still use much pricier DAPs on a daily basis that can give me more resolution, more transparency, a faster transit response, more power, less noise, so on and so forth, I still enjoy the sound of the M3 Plus. It just managed to put a smile on my face, and it will easily impress a music addict and probably not that much a hardcore audiophile. You don't get the Shanling M3 Plus for the ultimate resolution or for the fastest transit response. You get it for the sweet vibes, for the nostalgia that is hitting really hard. You also get the impressive power output of 800 milliwatts on its 4.4mm balanced output compared to 260 milliwatts on its predecessor M3 Ultra and 240 milliwatts on the M3X. So clearly it's more powerful by a lot, not only on the spec sheet but also when trying to drive some super hard to drive headphones, like for example these HiFiMan HE1000 Unveiled. I like these headphones quite a lot. These are probably my favorite headphones at around $3,000 US. They are very revealing, very clear, and these are no longer bright like it was the case with their HE1000 SE. These are much easier to enjoy and listen to. The only problem they have is that you need a desktop headphone amplifier to drive them properly, but that is no longer the case because you can drive them with the M3 Plus. A few years ago, that was probably impossible. For example, the predecessors of M3 Plus, they wouldn't drive the HE1000 Unveiled. You'll need some much more powerful, maybe even a portable headphone amplifier, but that is no longer needed. There are days when I want to enjoy the sunset, with a pair of desktop headphones and not with a pair of IAMs. IAMs are fine, but for me, desktop headphones are just sounding much more enveloping, much bigger, much closer to my reference loudspeakers. So that's why sometimes I want to use desktop headphones, in the evenings, maybe in the mornings. And that was almost impossible a few years ago because portable digital audio players were not that powerful. But that is no longer the case, and you don't need to shell something like $2,000 or $3,000 for a powerful digital audio player. That is no longer the case. This one works just fine with the HE1000 Unveiled. Maximum volume I could reach was 75 out of 100 steps available, so clearly I had more than enough headroom on top, and mind you, I'm listening pretty loud. And of course, the same story repeated itself with most of my headphones, including with the Sennheiser HD800S. I need to go a little bit louder, something like 80 out of 100 steps available, but still there was enough headroom and I could power almost anything I have except for those super hard to drive, like HiFiMan Susvara Unveiled. Unfortunately, for those you need something much more powerful than this. With such impressive power numbers, we also get some impressive dynamics. And although it was not really on the same level like the M5 Ultra or M8T that I tried 2 months ago at the Munich High-End Show, it's sincerely not that far away in terms of sheer dynamics and how punchy and how strong is the kick in the bass. Actually, the basses are slightly elevated on the M3 Plus, more so compared to the M21, and mind you, that one already had some elevated basses. It's slightly stronger in the bass versus the M21 by FiiO, And you can feel that immediately, not only with bass-intensive tracks, even with some regular, progressive rock, even with classic music, you can feel that the basses are slightly stronger than usual. And of course, when the basses are slightly elevated, you can feel that there is slightly more oomph, there is a stronger kick in your eardrums, and that impresses you. It's a small device, it's not so costly, and yet the basses are so fun and so punchy, even without touching that EQ option. When you have slightly elevated basses, very powerful and impressive mid-range, and you just leave the treble alone, there is a perception that the trebles are rolled off, are calm and soothing, and that's definitely the case with the M3 Plus. This isn't just a smooth sounding portable DAP, but quite probably the smoothest sounding digital audio player that I have experienced so far. I even find it rolled off in the top octave compared to any other DAP I tried around here, and I'm not saying it as a negative because some people are searching for years for this exactly type of sound. This is the sound actually of my youth, and I'm pretty sure you'll have a similar experience. So no, this is not your ultra-linear, ultra-flat sounding digital audio player with a strong treble delivery. It's the other way around. It's soft, it's mellow, it's relaxing, it's soothing. The mid-range seems to be boosted, and the upper treble is sometimes nowhere to be found, gently rolling off all the sharpness and all of the leading edge. As it was the case with the FiiO M21, this one is not so impressive on the micro scale. The inner detail, inner resolution, sharpness, contour of the notes, leading edge, all of that is not that impressive. It's a little bit fuzzy, it's a little bit muddy sounding compared to a high-end digital audio player. It's okay in here, but just not impressive. So this is probably the #1 reason why it reminds me a lot about the sound of my youth, the sound of my Walkmans and Discmans. If you care about such things, and if you want a sparklier treble delivery and sharper contours, sharper leading edges, then I would advise getting something else. I would skip Shanling entirely. I will get something from FiiO, for example. M17 is really impressive in that regard. Alright guys, now let's do a comparison between M3 Plus and FiiO M21, which are more alike than different if you ask me. So on the audio side, they have absolutely the same DAC chips, also 4 DAC chips. They have the same current buffers. The thing that is different is actually the voltage amplification. We have slightly different op amps, and analog circuits are more impressive on the M3 Plus. We have Elna Silmic 2 capacitors and also Panasonic tantalums, which can be found in high-end DACs and high-end amplifiers, so the analog stage is actually more impressive on the Shanling. On the other hand, the FiiO M21 uses a faster system on chip. This is the Snapdragon 680, and yes, when doing some comparisons, I can feel that this one is snappier and faster, and it responds a little bit faster to multitasking when swapping from one WAP to another. It's a little bit faster, I'd say by around 10 to 15%, which is not a lot, but if speed is important to you, then M21 is more impressive in this regard. The M21 is also a bit more advanced when it comes to features. For example, we have a global equalizer that can be applied on top on a third-party streaming app like Tidal, Qobuz, Apple Music, and if you like to play with EQ, then M21 is slightly better. We also have that all to DSD function, which slightly lowers the battery life but makes the music a little bit smoother, easier to enjoy. You also have a wider variety of accessories available for the M21. There are 3 different cases available for it, and one of them is truly unique. Just look at it. The M21, however, is not a perfect device. We have a lot more buttons and a lot more switches on the M21 versus M3 Plus, and let's not forget that we do not have an analog volume wheel like it is the case with M3 Plus. I need about 5 minutes to learn everything about the Shanling, and I need about a day or two to learn every input, output, switch and button on M21. And let's not forget that the Shanling is also smaller. It occupies less pocket space, so I like this part a lot on the Shanling. Sound-wise, their overall tonality and sound signature is quite similar, so both will impress you with a strong bass delivery, with a quite natural mid-range and relaxed treble delivery as well, and also impressive stereo separation, sounding a little bit bigger compared to their predecessors in terms of layering, soundstage, depth, and so on. The M3 Plus, however, will impress you more with all sorts of acoustic music, putting the mid-range region on the Iron Throne, sounding fuller-bodied and sweeter versus the M21. On a closer inspection, the Shanling is by a hair clearer sounding, like a very thin layer has been lifted and I can hear extra nuances when closing my eyes. But again, I remind you that neither of these are resulting in ultra clean sounding. On battery power, it becomes obvious that the Shanling has a bit more grunt, sounding livelier and pushing extra energy levels in the bass and mid-range with hard-to-drive headphones, and I presume that the extra capacitance of the Shanling makes it a bit more dynamic and a bit more engaging sounding. The M21 is ever so slightly shy sounding by comparison. It's not that explosive in the bass with planar headphones, and it's not that full-bodied in the mid-range with dynamic headphones. In the end, I believe that both of these players are impressive, and if you don't like to spend a lot, then the M21 seems like a better choice. However, if you like tube amplifiers, if you've grown with Walkmans and Discmans like I did, if you like all discrete amplifiers, art while other DACs, then getting the Shanling M3 Plus seems like the right thing to do. Sure enough, the Shanling M3 Plus is not a perfect digital audio player. It's not that impressive when it comes to resolution, detail, it's not very sharp, it's not very contoured when it comes to leading edges and contour of the notes. It's also not that impressive when it comes to sound enhancements. We don't have a global EQ function. It's not the fastest when it comes to operating this one. It has a slightly outdated system on chip versus the competition. But man, once music starts playing, you simply forget about all of these things. Just close your eyes and you are instantly by 20 to 30 years younger. The sound is so vivid, it's so colorful, it's so alive and so different that you simply forget about the drawbacks and you start enjoying the moment. And this could be a moment of peace, of happiness, of sorrow. It really depends on what plays on your playlist. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. Please consider liking, disliking, commenting, maybe subscribing if you found this video helpful. And I'll see you soon with an ever solo device that does everything, and I'm not even kidding you. I'll see you very soon. Cheers.